Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Bo Beach, Free Speech, the podcast with Bo Beach, where we provide Nashville news and hot takes, right? With a focus on Nashville commercial real estate, politics, culture, and we'll even mix in a little sports there. So let's get started today, as always, with a talk about commercial real estate, right? And what I'd like to bring to your attention is just how difficult it has gotten to operate a restaurant in Nashville, right? So I'm going to give you kind of a current event story that puts in perspective for you the difficulty of the restaurant business in Nashville. 636 Division Street in Pie Town. Pie Town is right next to the Gulch. Pie Town is an area that is yet to gentrify, but a lot of people see it going in a similar direction as the Gulch has gone. Well, there's a little office building there, a two-story office building, 11,000 square feet on a third of an acre, right? It sold in 2022, 2 years ago, for $5 million, right? And that's a huge price, right? And truly for the value is in the land. When they bought the property, I do believe the buyer was expecting a ground up development there. I might be wrong about this, but they've since reevaluated and are now targeting a restaurant user in this two-story office building, right? And it was recently announced that the restaurant tenant is known as Federales Tacos and Tequila. So keep in mind, $5 million going in to buy the property. To get this building ready for occupancy, $5.5 million of renovations are needed, right? So you pay $5 million to get the building and the land. You pay $5.5 million to renovate it. And, what they're going to be doing is taking some of that second space out. So you're actually making the floor plate smaller. You're going from 11,000 square feet down to 8,500 square feet. So you're losing square footage. Plus, you've got to put $1 million worth of equipment in this building. Plus, you've got to pay for all of the furniture and fixtures that go into the building. And this isn't like furniture and fixtures for a home. We're talking about a business, a commercial property. That stuff is crazy, crazy expensive. So you've got over $11 million before you even make a single dollar back. And what are they going to sell there? Tacos for $4 to $8 each. So, if you haven't heard it before, the restaurant business is nearly impossible. And just because you've eaten at a restaurant before, just because you think you have good taste, maybe you were a waiter or a cook at a restaurant, being in the business of food is a whole different monster. And anybody with any common sense stays away. These guys out of Chicago have big kahunas, right? To have $11 million invested in a restaurant space of 8,500 square feet to sell $4 to $8 tacos. You've got to sell a gazillion tacos just to get back to even. I wish these guys luck. They've got a 3,400 square foot patio, which is massive. And the most interesting aspect of the renovation is they're actually planning a 2,000 square foot clear retractable roof. So it's not good enough that they open up the second floor space, they put in a clear glass roof. It actually has to open up like it's some type of baseball stadium or something, or very similar to, what they hope to do with the new Titan Stadium. But a 2,000 square foot retractable roof for a restaurant is really kind of unheard of. So if you needed another reminder to stay out of the restaurant business, especially in very expensive, very competitive downtown Nashville, this is your reminder. Let's move on. It was recently said to me that retail real estate is performing the best it has in 15 years. So retail is really pretty solid right now, right? It's kind of a new normal whereby we're not the same kind of retail that we had 15 years ago. The best example of that is the big box stores. The big box stores are still flourishing. They're still having to be kind of repurposed. But generally speaking, the new normal real estate, the condition of the retail real estate business is very, very strong right now, stronger than it has been in 15 years. Evidence of this is a buyer recently purchased the Best Buy anchored retail center in Cool Springs. Right? If you know where Best Buy is located in Cool Springs, I would tell you that it's not one of the best areas in Cool Springs. It's probably the last area I'd want to be in. Nevertheless, Old Navy is over there. The old Nike store before they closed it down. Restoration Hardware Outlet is there. 200,000 square feet of retail space just traded. In 2012, that property was purchased for $25 million. Just recently, it retraded for $34.5 million. So retail is very, very healthy right now, but it is a new kind of healthy. Let's keep moving. It's recently been studied, the total tax burden by state, right? So there's all kinds of different taxes, right? You've got your state income tax, you've got sales tax being the next most important, and then you've got property taxes, you've got all kinds of taxes that these governments have thought up, right? If you measure all of them, right, and try to rank in order the states with the lowest tax burden, total tax burden, guess what? The great state of Tennessee is in the top 4 lowest tax burdens in the entire country, along with Florida. Shout out to Florida, much respect. And then you've got a few very small, by population standard states, Wyoming and Alaska, which is really not our peer group. But Tennessee and Florida, the lowest tax burden in the country, or at least in the top 4. Shout out to Tennessee. Shout out to Florida. Congratulations. That is the way good governance should operate. Next, Tennessee legislators recently passed on school choice, right? And school choice is one of these interesting topics. The idea is every student has, whether you attend public school or not, you're paying into this public school system. So the idea is if you're paying into this public school system, you should be able to take that money that is attributed to your child and use it in a public school setting, or perhaps be reimbursed in a homeschool setting. And this is something that recently passed in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. It certainly passed in Iowa recently. And, a lot of conservatives are advocating for school choice. The conservative legislature, which is a supermajority here in Tennessee, actually voted it down. Didn't even get out of committee actually. So they never even got to a formal place where a vote was taken. There was just too many issues. And my thinking on this is, I'll give you my wife and I are both conservative, right? And my thinking on this is we have 4 children. All of them are homeschooled. Homeschooling is not an inexpensive thing, depending on how you do it. We use a lot of outside help, pay for a lot of outside resources. I was thinking, if this could result in a lower tax burden for me, like I have to pay less taxes to offset the cost of homeschooling, that'd be cool. And my wife, boy, she did not like that idea. And her thinking on it is, you don't want the government in private school matters or homeschool matters. There are going to be strings attached, right? So as soon as you start taking that government money, there are going to be strings attached, and she didn't want anything to do with it. So perhaps that's some of the feedback that our legislators have gotten here in Tennessee. And because this is one of Governor Lee's big projects, right? One of the things he's really trying to push through, and it was a pretty colossal failure. So I don't know if we'll see school choice talked about much more in Tennessee. I'm not sure what the official stated problems they had with the plan. But if you ask my wife, she doesn't want anything to do with it. Keep government out of private school. Keep government out of homeschool. Keep your money. How about this? Just charge us less taxes. Criminal justice reforms were passed as part of this past legislative session. And then there was also a business tax cut called a franchise tax cut. Both of these things I think are pretty minor in nature, and most people probably aren't even paying attention. Let's talk about Williamson County, right? Where I live, where I do a lot of business. Williamson County. The Nashville metro area, which includes Williamson County, has received 20 new headquarters over the last 5 years, which puts us in the top 5 metro areas in the entire country. Many of those new headquarters landed in Williamson County. And a recent Business Journal article was making a case for why that is, right? They say the number one reason we've been able to attract those new headquarters is no state income tax, which is believable. It's also been explained that many of these headquarters are landing in Williamson County because Williamson County actually has 40% of all Class A office space in Metro Nashville. So we've got a lot of the good office product. That's why people land here. They argue that Williamson County is 20 miles from the airport, which is perfectly positioned. They also make a few other arguments that I'm not sure about, right? And I'm going to push back on these. They think that there is value having separation from your competitors. So if your competitor is in downtown Nashville, there's some type of value having some separation and putting your business in Williamson County. I think that's silly. I don't think a person that's really a business minded came up with that reason. That sounds a little far-fetched to me. Also, they're arguing that Nashville generally is attractive as an East Coast complement. And I'm rejecting that one too. I think that's dumb. So here's why I think, being kind of a no-nonsense guy, Williamson County is a utopian place whereby almost everyone that lives in Williamson County is a good person. That's a fact. So there are very few places like Williamson County in this country. I will tell you because before we moved here, we looked, right? We originally wanted to live in Florida and had a place in Jupiter, Florida, as a matter of fact, thinking that might be where we spend the rest of our days. And the big challenge there was that it was the people were very, very different than they are here. So like-minded, very, very good people in Williamson County. I think that's why people want to be here, right? But also, if you zoom out a little bit, why are people targeting Tennessee? Well, Tennessee is a red state, right? And that's a fact. So blue states are very, very much struggling, high tax burdens, high regulations, outflows of people, all kinds of drama and nonsense and demoralized business people living there. Take it from me, who's lived in Illinois, who's lived in Wisconsin. That is not a good feeling to be a business person who's trying to grow their business, pay their bills, and then have the state actively working against you, right? Red states are known to be actively working on the behalf of businesses to help them prosper and grow. So red states have absolutely been dominating blue states, especially recently. So I think most of these business relocations are first looking at a small handful of red states and then selecting amongst them. That is common sense if you're a business owner. But the other thing that we've got going on here is growth, right? Growth makes everything easier. If you move to a place that's growing, it's easier to make money in that place. People are moving there on purpose, so they're happy to be there. There's just a different feel to it. Whereas if you're living in a place that perhaps is on a downward trend, something like Chicago, Illinois, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin, both places I've lived, those places have had their best years are in the past, right? So they're on a downward trend. Some are steep. Some trends are steeper than others, but there's no doubt about it. Both of those places are on a downward trend. You can see that. That's reflected in people's attitudes. That's reflected in how people treat each other. That's reflected in the quality of person that's there. So if you get to a place where there's growth, perhaps it's more expensive to live there, right? That's an issue of supply and demand. There's more demand to live in a place, the cost goes up. Well, there's a lot of demand to live in Williamson County. There's a lot of demand to live in Nashville for the reasons we've stated, but also because there's growth there. And since you're paying in to get into this place where everyone wants to be, the general atmosphere is more positive, more uplifting, and just more enjoyable, right? So I think that's really why we've gotten so many headquarters in the past 5 years. And that's also why Williamson County has attracted an above average amount of those headquarters. Let's keep moving, y'all. Colleges and universities in Middle Tennessee. If you had to rank them by size, right? And we're gonna use the metric of undergraduate students, which is the major, most reasonable measure of a college or university's size. What do you think the biggest college in Middle Tennessee is? Most of you, I'm thinking, are going to say Vanderbilt, but that's not true. The biggest college and university in Middle Tennessee is MTSU in Murfreesboro, 18,000 students. Number 2 is Vanderbilt, 13,000 students. The only private college in the entire SEC conference. Also the reason probably why we get whooped in almost all sports except baseball. Number 3, Tennessee Tech. Did you see that coming? 9,000 students. Tennessee Tech, of course, in Cookeville. Been there a number of times to watch the high school basketball tournament. Shout out Brentwood Academy. Number 4, Austin Peay in Clarksville, also 9,000. Number 5, Tennessee State. This is the surprise for me. Nashville-based Tennessee State. You don't hear much about them. 8,000 students. And then you've got number 6, the fartsy. Ooh, I regret having said that. The artsy Belmont with 7,000 students. Beautiful campus. My son goes to basketball camp there each summer, so I've been on campus a number of times. Very, very dense urban location, but very nice campus. So I wonder how many of those you got right. Let's keep moving on. J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the most respected banks and businesses on planet Earth. The head honcho, Jamie Dimon, right? Jamie Dimon, also one of the most respected CEOs, commonly thought of as certainly the best banking CEO in our country, arguing that New York City is in free fall, right? And the hubris of the local government is causing it, right? And the argument he's making is, New York City has really lost its footing and now is competing with places like Nashville and Austin. So all of a sudden, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase, one of the biggest, most important companies in New York City, is arguing that New York City better get their act together because now they're competing with none other than Nashville and Austin. They also mentioned in that conversation Miami and Dallas, which makes sense to me. Those are all lovely cities. My favorite on that list, Nashville. Then I'm going Dallas. I haven't been to Austin, but for what I know about Austin, I don't like a lot of what I know about it. And Miami I like, but the traffic in Miami is crazy. So I'm not sure if I'm going Austin or Miami next, but it's definitely Nashville and then Dallas for me. And these are the new global business hubs in this country. What do you notice about that? The new global business hubs are all located in red states. Some of this stuff is real obvious to me, but some of y'all out there have your head in the sand and aren't paying attention. So I got to be real obvious with you. All right, let's keep moving. I'm going to give you a little bit of sports. We don't have too much sports today. Nashville SC. As I mentioned last week, former season ticket holder. This is the first season we didn't have tickets. Now, Nashville SC has got 4 seasons under their belt. This is their 5th season, if I'm not mistaken. The first 4 seasons, they made the playoffs every year, every single year. Now, where are we? Nashville SC has won 3 games out of 19. So they're in a really tough spot. And this was the former MVP, Hani Mukhtar, in his prime. They've only won 3 out of 19 games. And their next game is against the number 1 Inter Miami, or International Miami, with none other than Lionel Messi. And we're playing without 2 of our top defenders, Walker Zimmerman and Shaq Moore, both out with injury. So if I was a betting man, I would tell you we won 3 out of our last 20 after this game. Nashville SC is having a rotten year, and I'm so thankful I don't have season tickets to watch it. All right, let's talk about some politics, y'all. So this is the trigger warning portion of the show. I'm a conservative, proudly so. So if you don't want to hear what I have to say because it's a sensitive topic for you, you feel free to turn it off right now. But us conservatives, we're going to discuss it, right? One of the obvious problems in this country right now is inflation, right? And anyone that was paying attention that wasn't in some type of ideological trance knew inflation was an issue 2 years ago. The problem with this is the government, our Democrat government that we have at the federal level, all they know how to do is spend money. If they can't spend money, then there's nothing left for them to do. They've done absolutely nothing in their last 3.5 years except spend money we don't have. So if you take the idea of spending money off the table, there's nothing left for them to do, right? So they had to convince themselves and then, their followers that, inflation is transitory. Remember when they were saying that? They were trying to convince us that inflation was transitory, even though even Obama's own economist was coming out and saying that's nonsense. It's not. Well, they didn't care because this is their chance. They're in power, and all they'd know how to do is spend money. They could not resist. And if creating inflation was a byproduct of all of their, ideological values, well, then that's something we just have to deal with, right? That's the decision they made, and now we're dealing with it. And now that they've created runaway inflation, which you can see in every item you buy, right? Especially at the grocery store. The grocery store is the part that hurts the most, if you ask me. All of that inflation, they think we're going to solve it by lowering demand in the private sector, right? Interest rates go up, people start spending less money, demand goes down, prices go down. So they're trying to create inflation with government spending and then tamp it down with less private sector spending. The problem with that, y'all, is if all they have to do, but they don't care enough about you to do it, is to stop spending so much money. If they would just pull back the government spending and not expect us, the consumer, to do it all for them, all of the inflation would have gone away. But if they did that, they would have no platform to run on because their entire platform is spending more money that we do not have. So our problem with inflation, if whoever needs to hear it, is too much government spending, borrowing money at higher interest rates to turn around and spend on things that we don't need and further fuel the inflation. It's this nasty cycle. So don't let anyone tell you that the government did not cause this inflation, and don't let anybody tell you that the government couldn't solve it on their own. They are just unwilling to stop spending money. That is the biggest issue I have with all government, all federal government, no matter who's in charge at the time, because no matter what, it's always going to flip-flop back and forth eventually. And everybody is spending too much money. All right. So let's talk about politics, right? I thought it might be fun just to talk about what I would do if I had the magic wand, how I would fix our federal government, right? This is my wish list, right? I would shrink the size and scope of the federal government substantially, right? I'd like, maybe 80% reduction. Let's go down to 20% of what we're spending and doing right now at the federal level, right? We are not going to spend a dollar more than we collect in taxes, right? If we don't have those taxes coming in, we don't get to spend the money, right? We are going to leave children alone. The federal government is going to do nothing to children except protect them and ensure their parents are responsible for their safety and well-being. At no point will the federal government ever get in the way between the parent and the child. And I think that is absolutely insane that we have to say that, as if some government idiot is better at raising children than that child's father or mother. We're going more freedom. If there's ever a trade-off, we're going more freedom, not less, especially with freedom of speech. How about this? We are going to divide up by values, right? So we've got 50 states. Each state is going to have their stated values. And then people, rather than trying to change the state that they're in, like a liberal trying to change Tennessee, if they want liberal values, they're going to look, okay, these are the states that have my values. I'm going to pick the one I want and I'm going to move there. And we're going to live there in this utopian existence with other people that have my same values, right? So then those states can all compete with each other. I just think that is a more harmonious way to live. And there's certainly a better way to handle things than more of a civil war type scenario where, civil war doesn't necessarily have to mean guns and bombs. And, it could simply mean, stop paying the federal government. It could mean stop listening to the federal government. It could be, just disobeying the federal government and just totally pulling back, no longer accepting money from the federal government, doing everything self-sufficiently in your own state, and just disconnecting from the group. I've often thought we've been on the verge of some type of civil breakup like that these last couple of years with the lunacy that we've experienced, with everything we saw during the overreaction to COVID, right? If those are the fools that are going to be in charge of us during a relatively not scary new cold virus, right? If you are going to blow that scenario so badly, I would rather divorce from you and we're going to make our own rules, right? Because that is what we saw during COVID was un-American. And if that's the new version of America, I think the red states should opt out. Easier said than done. But generally speaking, I think the states should be much more important than the federal government. I think all of the assistance, all of the social safety net stuff, everything should be at the state level. And the federal government should really be more of a role player, just a few important things. One would be national security, right? They're going to be a role player for the states, but the state becomes the entity that matters most, right? That means the state has to untether from the federal government and all of the overreach that we've experienced over the last couple hundred years. And the state needs to be running their own show with the federal government being more of the role player, right? This is my dream, right? And then we're going term limits for all government employees, everybody. No one gets to work for the government their whole life, right? We're not doing entrenched people that are working behind the scenes to influence elections. We're not doing any of that. Government work, mind you, there's going to be a whole lot less jobs amongst my plan, but to get access to those jobs, which should pay well if you're a qualified, impressive person, but there's term limits. You're going to go in, you're going to do your civil duty, and then you're going to move on to do something else. There aren't going to be any lifetime government jobs if I'm in charge. So shrink the size and scope of the federal government. Don't spend more than we collect in taxes. Leave the kids alone. More freedom, not less, especially with speech. Divide up by our values. Choose the state that has the values that you're looking for and move to that state rather than trying to change the state you currently live in. The state should be more important than the federal government. We need to untether from the federal government. The federal government needs to be more of a role player for a few important but very reduced roles. And we should have term limits for all government employees. What do y'all think about that? I think that's pretty fun. All right, let's keep moving. Let's do another Nashville story, right? Here is another business where I'm thinking, wow, how does this work, right? So it's recently been announced that Justin Timberlake has somehow assigned his name to a new golf project. Usually these celebrities license their name to the underlying owner, right? That's what happens with all of the bar and restaurants down on Broadway, right? You know, Jason Aldean's so-and-so. Well, Jason Aldean doesn't own it, but he is getting paid. Every drink that's sold, he gets paid because he licensed his name to the owner of the bar. So I don't know if that's what Timberlake's done here, but supposedly this business is backed by Justin Timberlake called the Bounty Club. The Bounty Club is a new golf course in Whites Creek, 18-hole golf course. So 18 holes of golf, 460 acres, massive. What I don't understand is the numbers. Listen to me here. $30 million they paid for the dirt. $30 million. This is before you add any of the golf. $30 million just for the dirt. This golf course is going to be available to only 300 members. So $30 million for the dirt, still got to create the golf course, still got to create the clubhouse. The clubhouse itself is only 6,000 square feet. Not a big clubhouse, right? So you got this little clubhouse, this big land, 18 holes of golf, 30 million is what going to be what? I don't know, 40 million by the time you're done. So you got $40 million into an 18 holes of golf for 300 members to play. You tell me, how's that work? What's the point? What's the point of that? So you're going to charge an insane amount to be a member there, but then what? You could play golf a few times a year and there'd be nobody there. I don't know. I don't get it. I hope it works. You know, I'm not a hater. I want all businesses to work. But some of the upfront money that people are spending on some of these businesses, I'm thinking, oh my God. As a business owner myself who started businesses that have worked and have not worked, one of the biggest things I do before I don't want to risk a lot of capital, a lot of cash up front until I know that business is really going to work, right? And some of the businesses I've described for you today, both the restaurant and the golf course, are spending insane amounts of money before they even realize whether or not that business is going to work. So that's just kind of shocking for me. All right. Did you know that car insurance, the cost of car insurance has gone up 22% in the last year? 1 year, on average, car insurance has gone up 22%. You know, like everything, the cost of everything has gone up in the last 3.5 years. And it is due to massive mismanagement at the federal level and an absolutely ridiculous response to what we call COVID.